What is going on, college basketball fans? Today we have our updated Dannyology Power 35 rankings. I'm sorry for the short delay on the upload of this video. Ideally, we want to have these out every single Monday morning, but at the latest, we're going to have them out very, very early Tuesday morning every single week. Sometimes get a little bit busy, but it's all good. We're going to get them out here every week, all season long, along with a bunch more college basketball content here all season, throughout the off season. We're trying to grow this channel into the #1 college basketball channel in the world and just grow it out. So definitely subscribe if you guys are new. Hit that like button if you guys enjoy. And yeah, guys, let's get into these rankings. All right, our updated rankings, here they are. This is how we do it. We give it to you all at once. We are going to go over it in depth, 1 through 35. And we, of course, have our honorable mentions, teams that just to look out for, see if they can get a few wins this next week and crack the top 35 next week. So our #1 team, hard to argue with this one. If you don't have Purdue as your #1 ranked team, I'd love to hear an argument for somebody else. I was kind of close to still keeping Arizona as my #1 team because I did have them #1 last week, but Purdue, after winning the Maui, it was such a stacked field. They look really good. I think they have one of the deepest teams in the country. They have great size. Zach Edey, Trey Kaufman-Renn, Caleb Furst. Very, very great size. Fletcher Lawyer and Braden Smith are kind of starting to improve a little bit. It seems like whenever one of them's on, the other one's off. Like if they can both get on at the same time in the same game, this team can be very, very dangerous. But the player that has really been the X factor I've seen for Purdue has been Lance Jones. Lance Jones has been a difference maker for this Boilermaker team coming off the bench, and it's he is definitely kind of feels like he is an X factor, kind of like momentum type player. He's really going to fire up his team whenever he does make a great play, and it's great to have those players on your team. Right now, Purdue looks like the #1 team in the country. #2, we do have Arizona. They're another team that has really good wins. Purdue has beaten Tennessee and Marquette. And then Marquette in the Maui Jim Maui final. But Arizona has some really good wins under their belt as well. They just recently beat Michigan State, and they arguably have the best win of the season because they played a true road game at Cameron Indoor Stadium versus Duke, and they won that game. And they're another team that just look absolutely amazing. They have amazing guards. I love their point guard. I love all their guards. Very deep guard team, and just all around they've been playing awesome. They're my #2 team. Like I said, if anyone has argument for #1 other than Purdue, I think it would be Arizona. To me, the clear #2 team in the country. #3, I do have Marquette. They do have one loss on the season to my #1 team in Purdue, but they played that game very, very close, and eye test wise, they definitely look like they have to be a top 5 team at this point. They look amazing. They beat Kansas the round prior to losing to Purdue. They narrowly was able to knock off Purdue. And Tyler Kolek, I think he might be the best point guard in the entire country. He looks really good. Cam Jones is looking really good. They have a lot. They're another team just like Arizona, have a lot of really, really good guards on this team. Marquette is my #3 team in the country right now. #4, we do have UConn. Now, UConn, they did defeat Texas. That was a very good win. They've looked good in every single game that they've played in so far up to this point in the season. Texas was missing Dylan Dessou and also Caden Shedrick in that game against UConn. But UConn still, very impressive win. They're undefeated. They look awesome. Defending national champions. They're here at #4. #5, we do have the Kansas Jayhawks. And yeah, Kansas has looked pretty good other than that loss to Marquette. I'm not sure really what happened to them in that game, that they just did not look nearly as good as Marquette did. But Hunter Dickinson has been playing awesome all season long. They are another team that has one of the best point guards in the country in Harris. Kevin McCullar has had a couple of games where he's had a triple-double. He looks to be very, very good this season as well. Kansas, very solid team. Right now, they're my top team in the Big 12. They're here at #5. #6, forgot Houston's in the Big 12. Yeah, very close there. Houston, they haven't really played anyone too great. up to this point in the season, but they're undefeated. They're looking really great. Haven't lost to anybody they shouldn't have. They've looked great in these games. LJ Cryer is definitely a difference maker here on this team as well. They're just one of those teams they're always going to play physical. They're always going to have athletes. They're always going to have good shooters and good defense. And those are all very, very good things to have for a winning team. Kelvin Sampson, one of the best coaches in college basketball today, and he's got the Cougs in the top 10 here at number 6. So number 7, we do have the Miami Hurricanes, very similar to Houston, as they are an undefeated team but just haven't really played anyone up to this point in the season yet. But they do have a pretty big game coming up in the ACC SEC Challenge versus Kentucky. I'm very excited to watch these two teams go at it. We're going to learn a lot about these two teams, and I'm a big fan of Norchad Omier. I think that he had such a significant role in Miami's run to the Final Four last year. Even though they're missing Isaiah Wong and Jordan Miller from last year's team, they still got Nigel Pack. They brought in Matt Cleveland. They got a solid squad. I think Miami is a clear top 10 team at this point. Number 8, we do have Baylor. They're a team that did get a win over Auburn, so they have played a pretty decent team. And they also beat Florida in a very, very close game. So that's 2 very good wins. Baylor, by Scott Drew, very, very consistent. I feel like myself included, along with everybody else, kind of forgot, oh, yeah, man, Baylor's losing a lot of their guards. Keontae George, LJ Cryer left for Houston. What are they going to do, man? Well, Scott Drew reloaded. They have another star freshman guard on their team. They're very consistent, and that's really the key to Scott Drew's entire career since he started building up Baylor. Baylor was not a good program until Scott Drew got there, and then ever since they started winning, very, very, very consistent, and they are staying that way as they are consistently in the top 10, and they're here at number 8 for me. Number 9, we do have the Duke Blue Devils. Yes, they do have 1 loss, but it is to my number 2 team in the country, and they have other pretty good wins other than that as well, including a win over Michigan State, which is a very good team. They just have had so many losses because they've had to play so many great teams, but that's not really an excuse for them. They just can't win those big games right now whenever a lot of people, including myself, thought Michigan State was going to be very good. I still think they're very good, but maybe not quite as good as we thought. And Duke, that still, to me, is a big win for them. I think Duke is, at this point, the number 9 team in the country. Number 10, we do have the Kentucky Wildcats. They played an amazing game against Kansas, was almost able to win that game, and that's even missing some of their big guys. I think this Kentucky team has a lot of potential this year, and yeah, they're very similar to my number 11 team, which I will transition there. They're another team in Texas who played a really good team in UConn, who's my number 4 team, but they were also missing some of their bigs in Kanan Shedrick and Dylan DeSue, and I don't think that they looked that bad in that game. I still think that they were pretty competitive. They were trying to stay in it. If they did have their bigs, I think it would be a lot closer of a game there versus UConn, and maybe even Texas was able to win that game. I think Texas is very underrated so far this season. I got them here at 11. Number 12, I do have Gonzaga. Gonzaga is another team that lost to a very good team. They lost to my number 1 team in Purdue, and is a team that definitely has a lot of size and I think some underrated guards. I think Ryan Nembhard, the transfer from Creighton, one of the most underrated point guards in the country, and he's doing some good things there at Gonzaga right now. And Mark Few, similar to Scott Drew, very, very consistent. Very consistent. You can never count out Gonzaga as far as being a top 10 team. Next up, we got Villanova, and they're one of my highest jumping teams this week, as last week I didn't even have Villanova ranked, I don't think, because they did lose to Penn, but now they won the battle for Atlantis, beating teams like Memphis, like North Carolina, and they look very, very good. They looked very, very good while doing it. I mean, I was pretty high on Memphis. I was pretty high on North Carolina as well. and Villanova was able to knock them both out and win the battle for Atlantis, which, other than the Maui Jim Maui, was probably the next stacked field as far as early season tournaments in Feast Week. So I was very impressed with Villanova. They deserve to jump up this high. Yes, they do have a bad loss to Penn, but that is a rivalry game, and Villanova, eye test wise, other wins wise, definitely, in my opinion, beating North Carolina and Memphis, definitely cancel out that Penn loss. And I really do like this Villanova team. They're physical. Justin Moore, Eric Dixon were on fire in the battle for Atlantis. They look very good. I have Villanova here at 13. Number 14, I have FAU. They are a very, very similar team right now to Villanova. Not by the way that they play, but just by their resumes. Like Villanova, like I just mentioned, they had a bad loss to Penn. FAU, also a bad loss to Bryant. Probably worse than the loss to Penn, in my opinion. But they were able to win their Feast Week tournament in the ESPN Invitational, beating teams like Texas A&M, Virginia Tech, and they destroyed Virginia Tech while doing it. I think FAU, a lot of people are actually kind of lower on them than I am, but I still think they're up here at number 14. Very, very solid. Vladdy Golden looked awesome in the ESPN Invitational. John L. Jones, Elijah Martin, like they got some studs on this team. They brought almost everybody back from the Final Four last year. Look out for FAU. Don't sleep on them. Just because they lost to Bryant. They still look very, very good. Number 15, we do have Tennessee. They're a team that took 2 losses, but they did play in the hardest field Feast Week tournament in the Maui Jim Maui, so you can't really take too much away from them. Like, they're still a very good team. They played Purdue pretty close. I still think Tennessee is a top 15 team in the country, even with 2 losses, and Tennessee's coming in here at 15 for me. Number 16, I do have North Carolina. They did lose to Villanova in a very, very close game. I think North Carolina is still a very, very solid team, and I got them coming in here at number 16. 17, we do have Memphis. They have a really, really good front court, very similar to North Carolina. They lost to Villanova in the Battle for Atlantis championship game, and I think Memphis is still a very solid team. They just got beat by Villanova, so yeah, they're still here at number 17. Number 18, I do have Oklahoma. How about the Sooners, man? Very, very surprising. Another team that was not in my power rankings last week. But that's the thing about Feast Week and really the next couple of weeks in the season. We're going to learn a lot about these teams and kind of figure out who is actually top 35. And Oklahoma right now, this might be Porter Moser's best team that he's had with the Sooners since before he took Loyola Chicago to the Final Four. So I actually do think Oklahoma has a very solid team this year, undefeated up to this point in the season, beating teams like Ohio State, looking really good while doing it. 18, we got the Sooners. Next up, we got 19, we got the BYU Cougs, and BYU, undefeated team, similar to Oklahoma, but BYU does have one really, really good win on the season, and that is beating last year's runner-up, which was the San Diego State Aztecs. So BYU has a very good win under their belt. They're undefeated. They're easily a top 20 team for me up to this point in the season, and they're here at 19. Number 20, I do have Colorado State, man, and Colorado State got a massive win, maybe the best win of the week, maybe the most surprising win, when they beat Creighton by 20 out of nowhere, man. And Colorado State, not only did they do that, but they are undefeated on the season. They have a very solid team. I actually think that they might be the best. I mean, I can't really, as far as like projecting, I still would go San Diego State as the best team in the Mountain West. But right now, power rankings wise, Colorado State's got to be the top Mountain West team, and there are a ton of really good teams there in the Mountain West, but that is a massive, massive win over Creighton. They're undefeated. I'm a big fan of Isaiah Stevens. They got a lot of really good studs on this Colorado State team, and I got them in my top 20, man. Number 21, we got JMU, and they're another mid-major team that got a big win over Michigan State early in the season, and they're here at 21, still undefeated, still riding. How about them Dukes? I think they're undefeated in football and basketball. Like, what is going on at James Madison? Whatever they got in that water, I'm going to need some of it because their athletics are going crazy, and it's great to see. I love it, man. Number 22, we got Texas A&M. Yes, they did take a loss to FAU in a very close one. I kind of felt bad putting them still down this low at 22 because they still looked really good in that FAU game. Like, it was back and forth. It was a high-scoring game. Wade Taylor was looking amazing. And also, Henry Coleman got hurt in that game. I'm not sure exactly what happened to Coleman, but I know that he was out before halftime and he did not return for the rest of the game. I forget exactly what happened to him. I didn't watch this game. I was listening to it actually on the radio while I was at work. So I didn't really know exactly what happened to Henry Coleman. I need to actually look into that. Hopefully he's back and he's healthy. But Texas A&M, very solid team. They fought till the end in that game, and I think they're easily still a top 25 team. Number 23, we do have UCLA. Only my second team other than Tennessee that has 2 losses already on the season, but they looked really, really good. Played a close one against Gonzaga, and they played pretty close against Marquette. So I really like what this UCLA's team's doing, man. Very consistent team. Year in and year out, even though they lost a ton of production from last year, still a very solid team. They're here at 23. Number 24, we do have the Creighton Blue Jays. They're a team that I'm pretty high on. I mean, I'm a big fan of Ryan Cockburner, Baylor Shireman. Stephen Ashworth hasn't been too good for them this season, but he was great at Utah State. I think he's going to turn it up for them. And Trey Alexander, of course, he might be their best player. Big fan of them, and I think Creighton is going to bounce back from that loss against Colorado State. Just had a bad game. But I also do think that Colorado State is actually pretty good. Are they 20 points better than Creighton? Probably not. But, I still think Colorado State can compete with Creighton if they played again. Like, I think Colorado State is legit. It wasn't a fluke loss, but I do think that Creighton did play a bad game in that one, and they can get it turned around. Number 25, Nebraska. I debated putting Nebraska over Creighton just because it would probably make some Creighton fans mad, considering, Nebraska, Creighton, real close together, Omaha, Lincoln. But, I decided I still think Creighton's the better team. Nebraska undefeated up to this point in the season. They're a team that's making a huge jump. They weren't in my rankings last week, but they have actually looked pretty good. Like, they haven't beaten anybody that great or that noteworthy. But they have a very consistent team. I think 4 players that are averaging above double digits right now. And they're undefeated. So Nebraska, sneaking into my top 25 this week. Number 26, I do have Mississippi State. Very similar to Nebraska. They haven't really played anybody that great, but they are undefeated up to the season. And really the same thing for my 27 and 28. Clemson and TCU, they're both undefeated. Haven't really played anybody that great yet. But that kind of group of teams there, I'm very excited to see over the next couple of weeks, see if they can stay undefeated, see when they start to play other Power 5 teams, how they perform and how they look. Very excited for that. There at number 28, we do have, or at 29, I do have Nevada. I mentioned Colorado State and San Diego State being very, very good in a very, very good Mountain West Conference this year. Nevada is one of the main reasons why, because they are an awesome, awesome team to watch, and it would not surprise me one bit if the Wolfpack were able to win the Mountain West this year. They look very, very good. Like I said, undefeated up to this point in the season. Number 30, we do have Ohio State. They are winners of an early season tournament this feast week, and they look pretty good while doing it, beating Alabama and then beating Santa Clara. I mean, Santa Clara, you might think, well, that's Santa Clara. Well, that Santa Clara team was undefeated heading into the Ohio State game and just knocked off Oregon, who was undefeated until Santa Clara beat them. So Ohio State, that's a good win. And then they beat Alabama, which Alabama was looking like an amazing offense once again this year under Nate Oates, and looked like a great team. So Ohio State, out of nowhere, looking very, very good on the season, and they're here at number 30. Their only loss on the year being to my number 22 team, Texas A&M. Number 31, I do have San Diego State. They did take a loss to my number 19 team early in the season to BYU, but other than that, they've looked really, really good so far on the season. Lede, He looks like absolute stud, maybe one of the best players in college basketball. He has been lighting it up so far this year. Very excited to watch more San Diego State this year, and I definitely think that they are going to continue to climb back into my top 25 and maybe even back into my top 15, top 10 eventually, because they have a very solid team once again, defending runner-up from last year. I definitely think San Diego State is going to climb my rankings week after week. Number 32, I do have Alabama. Like I did say, they did lose to Ohio State. But then after that, I think they did beat Oregon. And yeah, Alabama, they still look like they have an amazing offense this year. Have a very good team. Grant Nelson, Mark Sears, they're here at 32. Number 33, we do have the Liberty Flames, still undefeated on the season. And same with Princeton. Princeton, very impressive start to the season for them. Undefeated. They got a win over Rutgers on the road, and that is not an easy place to play, especially because Rutgers is actually a really good team this year. And Princeton also beat Duquesne, which is a pretty good win there as well. Princeton and Liberty, look out for them as kind of my early favorites as mid-major teams. That could definitely do some damage in March Madness. Number 35, I do have Illinois. Illinois, only one loss on the season, I think, and that was to Marquette in a close one at home. But other than that, they haven't really played anybody else too great. They're here at 35 for me. My teams to watch, of course, Michigan State. Yes, they do have 3 losses on the season. That's why they're not in the Power 35. But let's keep our eye out for them because they do have an awesome team this year, and I definitely think that they could turn around. They just played a really tough schedule here to start the year. Bradley University, how about Bradley University? There are actually some really good teams in the Missouri Valley Conference this year, and that includes Bradley, that includes Evansville, who is also undefeated along with Bradley, Drake University, and I'm sure I'm missing some as well. There are some great teams in the Missouri Valley Conference this year. Whoever comes out of that conference and makes it to March Madness, look out for them to maybe be able to pull off a upset. Next up, we got South Carolina. They are undefeated at this point in the season, but they actually have not played anybody that great at all. Florida, they have a couple losses on the season so far. One coming to Baylor, which is in my top 10, and they actually played Baylor very closely. But I think Florida is a very solid team, and I think that they will be in my Power 35 here at some point in the season. Cincinnati is a team that very narrowly almost made my Power 35 this week. They're undefeated. They look very solid. I need to see some consistency. I need to see them beat a pretty good, decent team. And I think if they get a couple of wins this week, they will definitely be in the Power 35 next week. Also, Auburn has only one loss on the season, and that was to Baylor. They've looked very good ever since. Auburn looks, like I said, very good. If they can rack a couple more wins this week, they'll probably be in the top Power 35 next week. Providence, they look really good so far this year. I think one of the more underrated teams. So far this season, they did take a loss Kansas State, who is a very good team, and that is in overtime. I think Providence is going to be dangerous this year for sure. Kansas State is another team on my team's loss. They have a couple losses so far this year, but they have themselves a squad. They have themselves a squad. Arthur Kaluma, Cam Carter, Tyler Perry, you name it, they have a squad. USC has a couple losses. They're a team that did beat Kansas State this season, but I do think that USC is definitely a solid team. And also Wisconsin. Wisconsin impressed me very much, winning their Feast Week tournament, defeating Virginia and defeating SMU. And yeah, Wisconsin's looking pretty solid. We're going to keep our eye out on those teams to potentially make the Power 35 next week. Let me know what you guys think about my rankings this week down below in the comment section. Make sure you guys subscribe for more college basketball content because we are coming out with a ton of it all season long. You don't want to miss it. And yeah, guys, thank you so much for watching.